You've got big projects to tackle, but your day gets swallowed up by repetitive tasks and constant inquiries. It's hard to make progress when you're stuck putting out fires. That's where Element 451's AI assistants come in. Acting like an extra set of hands, you get your time back for the high-impact projects. Ready to reclaim your time? Visit element451.com/AI team to learn more.
Welcome to another episode of The Hidden Gem. I'm your host, Maya Demishkevich, and today we're exploring a topic that blends science, creativity, technology, and a bit of marketing magic, and that's direct mail. If you think that direct mail is outdated or irrelevant in today's digital world, I think this episode might convince you otherwise. Joining me is Eric Webb, an expert with over 20 years of experience in direct mail and direct marketing, and Eric has seen it all. And in this episode, we will dive into why direct mail still matters, how it can elevate your student recruitment efforts, and the role of personalization and creativity in making your campaigns stand out. But before we dive in, I have a quick favor to ask. If you find value in this episode, I would love for you to leave a review and share your feedback while you're listening. Your insights not only help me improve the podcast, but also make it easier for others to discover these important conversations. And if something resonates with you today, feel free to share it with your colleagues or friends. So thank you for your support, and let's get started. Welcome to The Hidden Gem, your go-to podcast that shines a spotlight on the strategic role of marketing and communications in shaping the future of community colleges. I'm your host, Maya Demishkevich, CMO at Carroll Community College. Every week, I sit down with community college leaders and industry experts to unpack strategies that work. We'll discuss practical insights and success stories to help you elevate your institution's profile and achieve your strategic goals. Tune in to amplify your community college's success, one conversation at a time. The Hidden Gem is part of the Enrollify network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. And let's get started. Today, I'm excited to welcome Eric Webb. I'm so excited to learn from his experience and the insights he has about the impact, the results he was able to see. So welcome, Eric, to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here and always interested in teaching people about direct mail, direct marketing, all those things.
That's exactly what we're going to do today. I see mailing and print as an important part of the marketing mix. And yes, people say that it's expensive, and some people say that print is dead. I don't think so. I think any tool we have in our arsenal has its purpose and has the way, if it's used the right way, it can deliver results. And it's called a marketing mix for a reason, right? You have to mix things up, you have to test, you have to measure it, and then see what actually works, because one channel on its own is not going to get you the results you need, right? So, and I feel like we're in an age where everybody gives too much attention to digital and maybe not enough to print. So I thought it was an important topic to cover and talk about how print can deliver those results and build those relationships that digital marketing cannot always do, right? Because there's this tangible piece that people get, they can hold it, and it's a very different way of marketing. So why don't we start with one of the biggest questions about direct mail, and that's its effectiveness and relevancy in today's marketing world. So How effective is direct mail, especially in student recruitment and higher education? Is it still relevant?
It really is, and there's studies out there that show the how direct mail has a higher impact on the brain and in response rates. It's also something that's very tangible, so people of all ages they like it. They feel it's more personal. Uh, it's interesting that there's a analogy to this, and that is, 10, 15 years ago, we'd look at our mailbox and we'd have a stack of junk mail, right? Well, we declassified as junk, right? Because it wasn't relevant, wasn't personalized. And so, yet we weren't not getting a lot of email, so it was a surprise to get an email from somebody. And you look forward, oh, it must be important because somebody emailed me. Um, those have flipped. Now, when you look at your mailbox, the real mail, it's less, but it's more personalized. And when you look at your email box, it's just so much email coming at us and online ads and, ads that follow us around. And we see them over and over because we talked, on the phone or something. And so now suddenly we're being, followed. So it's a little bit overwhelming, and we have a tendency, the brain, there's studies show that the brain does not absorb the electronic media as deeply. So, if you imagine you're a student or a parent of a student and you're getting, all these messages, you get to a point where you just become numb to them and you start to delete. And unfortunately, while email it can be very strong, it you don't know whether they're deleting or not. All you know is that maybe they open it, and then if they click, that's more important. But with mail, you can get all those same results, measurements, and there's studies from the Canadian Postal Service as well as the United States Postal Service that show the value of direct mail. And like you said, when you integrate the two, it becomes very powerful, much more powerful.
Do you have any examples maybe to support the effectiveness of direct mail?
Yeah, so if people look at the first major study was the Canadian Postal Service study, and they have some great infographics and stuff that you can look at, but they show, for example, that 66% of people keep their mail. That also one of the big highlights is that there's a 21% less mental effort to read mail than it is to read email. So imagine that. That's why, it doesn't go as deep, to the brain. 43% of the people who receive a mail piece ultimately order the product online. And then 64% that receive that direct mail piece have visited the website because of that direct mail piece. And then 54% engage in social media because of a direct mail piece. And that's where I think a lot of people get lost is when you ask most people who run marketing campaigns, they'll say, well, our biggest lead source is online. It's our website or it's social media. I said, but how do you know? How do you know they came there because of that? When you have 88 billion websites out there, how do you know that is the website that they typed in your name? And there's ways to research and go back and figure that out, right? You can ask your IT group and say, well, give me the search terms that drive most people to our website, or links, URLs, and so you can start to see what was happening. Is it really coming because of if people are typing in your name, they're learning about you some other way more than likely than just doing an online search, because your web analytics can tell you that they searched the term first and your name came up and they clicked on that. But if all you're seeing is that somebody typed in your name, well, where are they learning about that? So and it's from some other source. It's not traced to the internet, because otherwise you'd see that link.
Yeah, and very often the role of marketing is to raise awareness so more people start searching by your name, more people know about your college and go to search and
Exactly.
directly type the name in. You could see spike in those searches during the times of mail drop, right? Or radio commercials.
Or if they're adults,
Yeah.
and they're looking to go back, mail has a real strong pull for baby boomers
Mm-hmm.
because we didn't necessarily grow up with the internet, in high school and those kinds of things. It just really is in college when it started showing up for baby boomers. So if you're going after that audience, that segment that is older, adults who've already maybe gotten their college education, now they're going back. Um, Mail works really well for that group. The impact of the tangibility, how creative and personalized direct mail can become now.
Mm-hmm.
You can run a lot of people, you mentioned earlier, hey, mail can be expensive. It
Mm-hmm.
can be, but if you run in larger numbers, the cost shrinks. And also, most schools are not for profits. So you get a better postal rate with a not for profit indicia. And so the cost can be handled and maneuvered based on the numbers. And the ability to get lists now is so much faster and better, high quality list so you can personalize. And if you integrate what you've learned about those people because you're using a CRM and you're adding to that information each time they maybe visit the website and you see, oh, they visited, the chemistry department page and they spent 5 minutes there. Well, that gets pushed to the CRM. You can then leverage direct mail to act as a great buffer to personalize that mailing with the person's name, interest in chemistry. Here's our chemistry professor, or he's got all these accolades, and that's why we're one of the best chemistry departments, and that is now a very personalized invitation that they're going to hold on to. Especially have a great offer, right? When you think about direct marketing, it's all about the list, then the offer. The list is most important, offer is second most important, and then finally the creative around it. And that applies whether you're online or offline, So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
um,
I like how you outline those three things to consider when creating your direct mail campaign. So maybe let's talk about each one in more depth because there is a lot to know about your audience, the lists, and how to find a good vendor. So, can you share a little bit about, how, if you don't have a list in house that you have developed yourself, how do you go about finding a good vendor? How do you know if you get a good list? What you should be looking for?
so most people will go to the Zoom infos of the world.
Mm,
There's Zoom infos, there's Dun& Bradstreet. So Dun& Bradstreet's really built around business, so it's not a good list for targeting consumers. Zoom info has a little more consumer oriented, but it's also business built. I recommend and find a strong list broker. And that's somebody who specializes in going out and finding lists because there's all sorts of ways to find individuals, especially in the consumer world. Everything from subscriptions from magazines. I love when you can rent a list from a magazine
mm-hmm,
because they have to know that they have the right address that they're mailing it to. And you can do it with publications that are just online as well, but they maintain their content and the information around that contact really well. So, if you were to look at interests of students, there that would be one way. But you can go to a list broker and they'll do all that work for you at no cost.
mm-hmm,
And they will then show you and talk to you about here's the list that I can find. In some cases, you might buy more than one list and merge them. And when that person shows up on both, you know it's a really strong contact and the information is strong. So what I recommend and when I talk about lists to people is one, you're asking about how is the contact information obtained, right? And there's all sorts of ways, that information, whether maybe they attended a conference or a concert, to their school information. A lot of that is public, even though we think it's not. And then also just general information. They've signed up for things, subscriptions, to attend certain events, those kinds of things. Um, And then most databases also, when we think about data that's out there, even insurance companies, they know and they sell that data about, oh, here's the household, here's how many kids are in that household, here's their ages. So all that information's out there. A list broker can find that for you, versus to a Zoom Info would be considered a list compiler. And so they're kind of scraping different sources and then packing it in there. And it's not going to be as detailed in most cases, and it's likely not as accurate. So that's the first thing. How is the list derived? And I'll give you an example. Like Dun& Bradstreet, that's self-reported information about businesses. So if the person filling it out, and I know because I used to fill it out from the companies I worked for, they put in the wrong SIC code or something, and so it's off. The second part of looking at a list is frequency of how often they update it. So how recently it's been updated. So you ask the list broker, tell me, when they find your list, tell me how this is derived and how often it's updated. And they'll tell you, they'll say, here's how it's derived from trade show attendance. Here's how often it's updated. And then here's when they delete a contact out if they feel like it's not accurate anymore. So those two things really are the important components of any good list. And if you understand that and you work with somebody knowledgeable, a list broker, then you'll find much more highly accurate lists. And as a point to understand how good the list was that you received, 10%, no more than 10% of a list should have bad addresses coming back to you. If you get more than 10%, then there's something off about the list more than likely. I mean, 11%, within a margin, but if suddenly you're getting 20 or 30% back from bad mail, then that's something you need to talk to the list broker back. And they should be giving you some kind of a discount or credit. But in most reputable brokers, they know their lists and they know how to arrive and they feel confident in those lists. And generally you're renting the list for a one-time use, or you can rent it for a full year. And you can get, if you're targeting students, you're only going to be able to get where they live and their name. You might be able to also get the parent's name, that kind of thing. You might be able to get an email. They probably would give you a household phone number if they give you any phone number. There are some rules around, targeting people under the age of 18. Those two components, operate hand in hand, is how it's derived, the recency, and then what are kind of the stats around a good list. Because if you think about it, a list, if you look at your own database that you might keep, most people move every 5 years. And so that's whether it's because of a job or just the average homeowner moves every 5 years. So the reality is that if you're getting a list that's been compiled and it was compiled 5 years ago, a good portion of that list is not going to be good because the household moved.
Right. So what is your suggestion for keeping a good in-house list?
If you have an in-house list, you can send that out to a list broker and they'll do a merge purge or a merge append and say, these are the ones that have changed. And there are certain list brokers that even offer services where they'll call your list for you and verify all the information. So they'll call that contact and say, oh, are you John Doe? And this is your address? And yes. They probably won't ask about students or anything. They just verify address and that it's a real address. Also, the United States Postal Service, you have CAS certification. That will at least tell you at a minimum that that's a real address. So, and I highly recommend that anytime you have a list, even your internal list, you can run it through CAS certification and you can download that tool, or there's USPS has CAS certification online and tell you, yeah, all these addresses are still valid and good. Doesn't mean that person lives there, but at least the addresses are good. The other way, if you want to ensure that that person or that household, the people in it are still there, then you need to use a list broker and do some type of a merge and append. And you should do that on a yearly basis, at least. I'd recommend that. It's not that much more expensive. It might cost, depending on how big your list is, you might be spending $100 or $50 per 1,000 names to clean out your database.
Yeah, I know from my experience, we usually we buy the list from the broker, merge it with the list we currently have in-house, and send that out. We also buy a list from College Board, students who took SATs,
Yeah,
PSATs.
yeah,
So those tend to be a high quality
yeah,
list
exactly.
as well.
The other, I was thinking about this was when you can take your current data, right, for your CRM, you can give that to a broker, and at the same time, while you're asking them to clean it out, say, find me lookalikes within 50 miles, and so they will then find all the other potential people in the same age range, same demographics that you have in your current list, and that'll help you. Or if you really want to target a different demographic, let's say you want to try and target more minority students or adults of a certain age, then you can go to a list broker and be very specific, and they'll get you in that geography what you need.
Good suggestions. Since we started talking a little bit about digital as well, so what are some of the suggestions on how to best integrate direct mail with digital campaigns? Is it
So
at the
go
stage
ahead.
where you develop your list, identify your targets? What are your
Yeah, to me,
recommendations?
even on the online side, you still have to understand who your audience is, and take a look at your web analytics, and that's another great tool. If you look at your web analytics and it's tied to a program that'll tell you at least somewhat who these people are, who am I, does our website attract, then you can have an understanding of what's working or not. Probably the best example would be more product, but it could be the same for services, and that is I worked with a veterinarian or a company that serviced veterinarians, and their products were equipment that were human surgical equipment that was configured a little differently for veterinarians. Um, and they were using online tools, and so they were doing search, and unfortunately, because the products were named very much the same, they were getting a lot of attention from human doctors. Surgeons were coming to the website. Well, that's not their audience. And so I told them, you really need to rework your phrases and those kinds of things to make sure you understand the audience that's coming to you. But you could look at the web analytics and run those people who filled the form, and start to take a look at, okay, who are these people, to determine whether you're even attracting the right audience. As far as integrating the online, so once you understand your audience, there's two ways to look at it. Well, do you do a mailing first, or do they come in? And it's probably a combination of sometimes they get the mailing and that draws them there, and sometimes they come to the website first because they know that, hey, I'm interested in this college. My dad went there or whatever. And so now you decide when you might want to hit them in another, channel, versus, hey, we've been pinging this person via email. They've not been responsive. At some point, you need to look at it and say, that channel alone is not working. So direct mail today, especially with the USPS informed mail, which is using barcodes now, you can really have all the same measurements and understanding of who received the mail. And if you have some kind of offer in there, QR code, measurable URL link, like a bit.ly or something that's only being used for that campaign, you can then also set up a landing page that is a hidden landing page on your website that directs people who receive the mailing to that set. And they're the only people that should show up on that landing page because it's hidden in your site. And you can then start to understand, did that mailing work? There are companies out there such as DM 2.0 where they're really good at integrating, and they work with colleges. They've had great success, and they measure everything from giving you a pass-through 800 number. So if the student calls or the parent calls, they know it's from that postcard or whatever was mailed to them. And then URL links, and then they use informed delivery, the USPS. So they know, or through a dashboard that shows you as a marketer exactly how much of all the mailings actually made it to the household, because it's scanned when it arrives to the postal service, and then it's scanned by each household. That postal worker scans that barcode before they put it into the mailbox. So now it's at least made it there. And then the final result is, did we provide some kind of cool offer that got them to want to pump through? And the offer might be just personalization, right? That you've also personalized it to their interest, and it might be something like meet the leading professor of chemistry or something, in a quick 15-minute Zoom call, get to know the faculty, something like that, right? So, or you have some kind of webinar event that where you break it down. So those, again, that goes back to a good list, good creative, good offer.
Are there any examples of the offer or types of messages that you see resonating the most with prospective students or in the higher ed space?
The ones that I've seen so far, case studies that I've seen, and this one came from DM2O, was an offer, very targeted offer to minority students that would need help funding school. And they had something like a 1,700% increase in signups because of that offer. And again, it used the whole process, right? Mail, online, surrounding it. So those same people that they targeted received banner ads directly in Facebook, Instagram, and Google AdWords, but to them specifically. So it wasn't SEO based or broad term based like you normally think of online. The same list that was used for the mailing was uploaded into their platform, and the platform goes out and finds all the social media accounts of that individual and puts that ad there. So, and it's priced like direct mail, but you're only targeting those people specifically. You're not targeting like, people under 18, but over 15, blah, blah, blah. You're really targeting that person, Jane Doe, John Smith, who are in that age range and from the list that you have. So you could even take your existing, list that you have in your CRM, work with a company like DM2O, and they use informed delivery. They set you up with all the tracking for phone, all that stuff, and then they're porting the ads directly to that individual. So that's a fully integrated campaign. And that in that particular case study, because it was they knew what their audience was suffering from. They knew what the offer would be that would draw them in. And it caused, like I said, a 1,700% registration uptick, much higher than they expected. They were going to be happy with like 100 people. They ended up having 1,000 or something. So DM2O is not the only one doing that. There's others that are doing it. They were kind of the first to really do it. But to me, that's been one of the best examples of understanding your audience, targeting them across multiple channels, and they all support each other. And there's research that shows when you use online with direct mail, they both boost each other. And so your response rates really jump. I mean, and even the USPS data shows that. Both Canadian Post research and the USPS shows that when you combine the two, your numbers tend to boost by 20% or more.
Well, it makes sense if it is so targeted and they help their audience overcome a certain barrier that they have.
Right.
It just makes sense. It's going to get a good response. But I do see a lot of higher ed institutions sending view books out. Like it's not as targeted, right? It's more of
Broader about all the classes.
Institution, yeah. Then there are a lot of course schedules, brochures, etc. Have you seen any studies around that?
I haven't. Most of the studies I've seen tend to be when they're first capturing that individual. But as somebody that has worked with similar type, more catalog industry, those kinds of things, is mail can get expensive is you're mailing expensive brochures to people who have no interest. So that's where you might deploy something like lead scoring to help you determine when to mail and what to mail. And again, you're trying to nurture somebody through their self-education of your institution and whether it's right. And so, they might go to the website first, zip around. Hopefully, if you're using some type of integrated marketing automation into your website, you're gathering information in the beginning, probably just on their IP address. And then when they fill in a form, now all that search history from being on the website with that individual connects. Now you know who they are and what they're interested in. And setting up some kind of system that says, well, if this person comes back to the website several times in 30 days or 60 days, they interact on these pages because your automation system should be capturing where they're going. And maybe they've downloaded some information. So all that. Now's the time, and their score would go up. Now let's mail them a brochure that's printed on the fly, variable data printed, or it's done once a week, right? We get a batch of 200 visitors that have hit a mark where, hey, we should mail them information now. And you can do that with variable data printing now, just like you would a very specific, merge purge letter or something. You can print whole brochures that way now. You just need to have blocks of text, that you break down all the components of that generic brochure you normally just send and be a big thick book. Well, now you can cut your costs down because you could say, well, it's only going to be a 11 by 17 2-page folded brochure that we send to them, as opposed to a big thick item. But it's going to be very specific to what they were looking at online that we know. So that's one way to bring your costs down, get your response rates up because it's very personalized and targeted. And then have mechanisms, again, for measurement, right? You want to draw them back to the site because that's always your least expensive. You draw them back to the site to maybe fill in and give you more information about them, right? And so ultimately, you might end the whole cycle online where they fill out a form or they register finally. Yeah, I'm going to register for class, of course, and you'd see that. So
Right. So we talked a little bit about the lists, the importance of having a good offer. And now let's dive into the creative component of direct mail. What design elements do you see help increase engagement with direct mail pieces? Are there any specific formats that work really well? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so larger formats work best. And one of the most popular ones that I've seen that has had a high response rate among students has been multifold, almost like a map. It starts out small, but then it unfolds and unfolds and unfolds. So it becomes like a discovery.
Like an interactive piece.
Yeah, it's interactive. It's discover, and that's a big component of it is that and you can be real specific still, right? Because ultimately that was printed maybe double-sided on one sheet, and then it's put into a folding machine to fold it down and address it and mail it. And so that could be very personalized as well. And it could talk about, the journey through our, institution, leads to this. And it could have a lot of fun and creativity around it that makes them, one, want to hold on to it, and two, it continue to engage. And so things that are tangible in the print space, you can have, embossing, which can be very expensive, but you can do stuff with a lot of people don't realize there's all sorts of paper out there that has a different look and feel. We once did a mailing for a landscaper that was paper that was embedded with seeds. People would get the mailing, I told them, well, you get the mail, they're not going to throw it away. They're going to, tear it off and put it. So they would hold, and they'd send that in the winter, right? Timing, when people weren't thinking about landscaping at that point. And so they'd hold on to it and prepare to plant the seeds, in the spring. And so that kind of idea of looking at the types of paper that are out there, different finishes, as I would talk about it in the print industry. You can use gold foils, you can use paper that has texture to it, but creatively think about, what are those students into right now? What's the thing that, is it Dungeons and Dragons? Is it something else? So if you can play off of that with your creative and think about it make it somewhat, maybe it unfolds into a cool poster, but it's telling a journey, with a Dungeon and Dragon-esque kind of theme, that they hold on to it. Also leveraging, again, you could have fun with it and turn it into a game by having different QR codes where they get different answers about the institution, and they then take those answers and input it for some kind of sweepstakes or merch or something, that comes to them. So there's different ways to get that engagement. It doesn't always have to be them downloading something from the institution, but getting them engaged and them having an experience with your institution that they normally wouldn't get. Also coming up more and more that I see more is augmented reality, where you see, and it's not hard to do. Xerox has a whole, not Xerox, Rico has a whole group that specializes in augmented reality, and so you could have a little postcard that has a picture, let's say, of the dean or some athlete. One of the most popular season ticket to a college, I think it was Clemson, they had the coach in augmented reality, and so when you held up, his picture was on there, and you went over it and hit the link, he started talking as if he was the picture in the card was talking to, but you can have them where people, it looks like somebody climbs out of their business card, and they're walking around on that card, and of course that's all measurable too, so augmented reality, I think it's going to be used more and more in the future, because one, you can be very creative with it. It's interesting to watch. And if you're creative with what you're doing and what you're showing, people will hold on to it and they'll show it to their friends. And I'll give you an example where there was a company that had sponsors, golf pros. And so I told them, why don't we set up a monthly card you send to these businessmen? One will be some kind of insight about business, that they were a valuation company. And then the next one will be one of the golfers, one of the pros, giving a golf tip, because that, they knew a lot of these people played golf. And it would be augmented reality. The golfer would show up on top of the card and talk about how to do a proper swing or a putt, or, so that stack of cards was held on to. I mean, it was like, and it was on their desk, and they would show it. You could see that they were showing it to other people in the office. So the brand was just going nuts, and they were getting more business from it, because now these private equity groups were calling them about valuations and stuff. So
Yeah, it sounds like direct mail is such an awesome tool, but you have to be thoughtful about it, and you have to
yes,
put time into planning and creative, and
that's
that's
right.
when you're gonna see the results. Because very often what I see, and it's not anyone's fault, it's just we are so busy, we don't have the time to invest in like creating an amazing
Yeah,
direct mail piece, because there's so much happening. So it's trying to find the balance of, understanding the technology, understanding what's available to
right.
you, and trying to find the time.
You got to look at the return on investment, and a lot of people and marketers are forced to migrate to online, because the upfront cost to do a campaign online is very inexpensive, compared to mail. I mean, with mail, you got to do a print, and there's cost to that, and then you got to mail it, and there's cost to that, and it takes time. But when you look at the ROI and the response rate, right, direct mail has a minimum response rate around 5%, if not more, depending on the offer. It's always most important, and the list. Um, And you look online, email best response rate is somewhere like 0.5%, and the click through rates for online ads tends to be maybe 1%. But as a marketer, I can deploy that fast, and I can do quick tests, and I can do A/B testing, and a lot of the AIs now will get smarter about the creative and push it out there. So yeah, there's lots of time saving there, but the ROI ultimately on mail tends to produce much higher response rates and much higher engagement. And ultimately that's what you want. Uh, Now you combine the two with some kind of marketing automation in there, and you have a strong CRM system that's tied to that as well. Then now you can deploy less, and you can actually go to your budget office and say, look, I'm gonna, each year we deploy this, we're gonna spend less money and have better results because we're gathering information and we're learning what works and what doesn't, because you can have that kind of constant stream. And I always tell people, look at it this way: use your least expensive way of connecting with somebody first as a campaign, and you're going to get so many people that respond to that. Then the ones that haven't responded, now let's try mail as next campaign, right? And maybe the people who have responded, you still may mail them, but now it's going to be very personalized because you found out some information. Hopefully you're asking the right questions, and that's getting downloaded into your CRM and your marketing automation system. So that can all be automated and tracked. And so you're spending less to a great degree versus, here I'm in this community college, and I'm going to hit all the adults within 20 miles on our evening programs, and you're going to spend a lot of money on that. And so wouldn't it be better to do some initial hits? You could use some social media, some email, maybe if you have emails, although people tend to ignore people who haven't already say signed up or something, and they kind of know who you are, but you're not relevant to them right now. They tend to ignore those. So it might be social media, might be online, but the ultimate goal is I'm spending not as much to get those initial people that are interested, and then the rest I got to work a little harder for and figure out. Maybe mail is the way to do that. But you just have to time it so that you have good frequency touches, and that's always an issue with when you start integrating, is how well are we timing these things so that people are receiving them in such a way that they finally say, oh yeah, I do want to look at that college program after work, because that's a big part of it, is the timing of when these things are released. And if you just do like one a month, of course you're not going to have great results. And I get that a lot too. Well, we tried direct mail, and I said, well, describe it to me. What'd you do? We mailed a postcard. One postcard. Okay. We got nothing. I said, well, it takes more than one postcard. And, I'm not sure. Are you sure postcard was really the right way to go? And again, usually budgets are the things that get, they go the cheapest route, and as opposed to, let's look at something that's going to really make the person want to hold on to it. And you can have that same postcard rate, you just have a multifold. So you're going to pay a little more and fold it out, or it's going to be, one of those 3-dimensional cards that pops up, a pop-up card. And there's all sorts of things you can do that are cost effective. It doesn't have to be a full-blown book, with all the, the goal I usually take is let's give them a taste based on what we know about them. Here's the courses we see that you've shown interest in. For a full course guide, click, go to this URL, and you can download the whole PDF. So one, that's less expensive to get it out there. 2, it's more personal. 3, it's trackable, that how many people are clicking on the link or going to the website to download, and then you can see how many appear on the page, how many actually fill the form to download the guide. And those that do, now at the same time, you could ask them, first name, last name, email, all you're asking for. anything you require after that, you'll have a response, a drop of, I think it's 15 or 20%. So you got to think about that, how much you ask right away versus you just ask that initially. And then maybe once they download it, an email through marketing automation goes to the, hey, thank you for downloading this. What specific things are you interested in? It might be a drop-down list or something. So we can send you things that are much more relevant to you. And so you get them to fill out that information. Now you have that in your system. You could be a mailing or an email with more links to downloads, right? And if they keep clicking on those, and that would tell you, okay, they're highly interested. Maybe I should have, make them a really cool offer, like come in for our orientation, and the dean of chemistry is going to be there or something, and so they can really have a discussion. Or, hey, would you like a one-on-one with the professor that teaches this course? It's a 10-minute call, to ask questions about the course.
Great ideas and suggestions. Technology is key here, and having the right tools in house, right, to make this
That's right.
a reality. But you mentioned the response rate of 5%. Are there any other benchmarks or industry standards that we should be looking at when evaluating direct mail performance?
Yeah, if you go to the Direct Marketing Association, they'll have stats up there on a continuous basis, and they'll give you here's the response rates you can expect, broadly, and they do break it down by industry. And I believe education is one of those. I did not check with them before I had this call, but it's easy to just go on there and go to their site. They'll have that research for you. And so you can get a sense of it. What should I be performing? Broadly, that 5% holds true. But we know that if you integrate, the data coming from DM 2.0 shows that when you integrate the online with the offline, the numbers really improve by about 21% at a minimum. So, and they've seen that, and they have all sorts of case studies up there. I know they have 2 case studies from 2 different colleges up there.
Yeah, that's a great resource. We'll put it in our show notes as a link. We talked about a lot of different things about direct mail. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you feel is important to relay to our higher ed marketers, especially maybe at community colleges?
I would tell people, make sure when you get into direct mail, you're talking about it, you do have to get buy-in from those generally who have started before you or are, your report to. Make sure you got your numbers right, and you do take the time. Don't just do, oh, well, we did a postcard. And it wasn't personalized, and it wasn't, just don't do it if that's what you're thinking, because it's not going to work well for you. And I'd caution you not to do that, because it'll taint the future of ever using direct mail. And more studies are starting to show up, and you'll see if you type in search, it says, case studies of direct mail and higher ed or education. There's a ton of agencies out there that are working with different higher ed, and they're putting those studies and that information online, and it's proving that direct mail really works. So my biggest caution is don't just do it. Take your time and do it. Save your budget. Don't throw it out there, because it's not going to work for you. You're not going to be happy, and neither is your boss. So, and the next time you finally meet somebody who want to do something, you're going to have to really explain how this is different. So try and get all the good list, good offer, personalization, and be creative with it. These are especially for younger students. For older students, the needs are a little different in the offering. Always think about your audience as you would if you're doing online. But you try and be as specific as you can. Direct mail offers you such a tangible way to make an impact than the online stuff, because we're all so inundated with online.
Right. So the key takeaway: don't be just like Nike. Don't just do it, right?
Just do it.
Just do it, but do it right.
That's right. Do it right. I think that's Home Depot. But
Measure
yeah,
first,
exactly.
right?
Do it right, do your research, and really explore your audience. And
Yeah.
the analysis you do from the people visiting you online, there's a lot of information in there that can let you do great direct mail.
Mm-hmm. Well, Eric, I want to thank you for taking the time to bring your insights and your knowledge to us. And I'm sure many leaders, maybe in higher education, who are not familiar with direct mail will see that it's not as easy, and
That's
it's
right.
it's
It's
time
a science.
consuming. It is a science. It's science and art, and it takes time. But I learned a lot, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Yes, thank you so much. Enjoyed it. And if anybody has questions, by all means, you can have them contact me. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable. Let's keep this conversation going on LinkedIn at Maya Demishkevich. I would love to hear your thoughts, questions, and suggestions for what you'd like to see next on this podcast. Remember, by tuning in to The Hidden Gem, you're not just listening to a podcast, you are joining a movement of amplifying community colleges' success. Don't miss out. Subscribe to this podcast and notifications about our future episodes. Share it with your colleagues and college leaders to help make our colleges stand out. Together, let's make an impact. The Hidden Gem is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you will like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher education technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Jenny Fowler, Eddie Francis, Brian Gross, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.